An expanding trend among multiple left-wing media outlets is using the same basic tactics seen on the U.S. home front being applied to foreign affairs. Liberal outlets such as Vice and Now This, with their clear message of how our democracy is always under attack from our own domestic actions, are creating what they call dispatches from around the world with the same message. One of the first and most notable dispatch series was Vice, following on the war in eastern Ukraine. And since then, the New York Times has also started their own dispatch segment and attack right-wing parties wherever they can. This video isn't focusing on the informational warfare being waged by Russia and the US, but rather on exposing the liberal tactics seen all too commonly between their numerous materials. Why did I start with the left instead of the right, even though this is a neutral channel? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Whereas many right-wing medias focus on misinformation and bending the truth into such a knot that you can never untie it, left-wing medias give more of a presentation that offers little to no real value information. It usually involves the, quote, journalists, mostly following one group of their favorable political spectrum believers, throw in a couple of scary words such as authoritarianism, totalitarianism, regime, and the threat to democracy, add to that some irrelevant content that they try to make to appear relevant, cut out about 1 to 2 minutes of the worst parts of an interview with government officials or those opposite of the political spectrum, act unconvinced, and mash it up all together into an episode where many viewers of that content end up agreeing with the intentional message of the video, whereas in reality, no real information was given, nothing really learned, no actual reasons or actions mentioned from the cause and effect chain, or even deeply investigating the historical roots of the causes. In the end, they want the viewers to themselves come to the conclusion under little to no basis that this is good, that is bad. In this case, we'll be reviewing the New York Times' latest dispatch on Serbia, with the basis being that since Putin visited, the entire democracy of that country is and always has been under threat. And if any of you have watched multiple episodes from any dispatch series, whether it be Vice or the New York Times, I believe you'll find the formatting of this video all too familiar.
An impressive reception to greet President Vladimir Putin. He came to Serbia this week to shore up one of his allies, President Aleksandar Vučić, who critics accuse of dismantling democracy at home. The ceremony played out at this historic church. We watched the lavish festivities, which felt more like a coronation than a state visit.
The definition of coronation is basically enthronement of a king. The type and amount of popular support you would see at an inauguration ceremony. But of course, the New York Times is not going to mention how Serbia and Russia have been closely connected since the falls of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia respectively, and are closely tied in relation due to religion, history, territorial warfare with ex-Union members, political atmosphere, and economic troubles of the 90s. Basically, a huge amount of the Serbian population feel a deep connection with the Russian population, which is why they have come out to watch Putin's visit. Nobody was forced at gunpoint to come out and show their support. And to just give a very brief example of how truly Russia and Serbia have been best buddies for the last 20 years, the US stealth fighter that Serbia shot down, an F-117 stealth fighter, all the remains of the fighter plane containing stealth technology back then only demonstrated by the US was sent to Russia completely for free. So moving on and completely skipping what the Serbian people feel about NATO bombing them into submission.
People attended from all corners of the country, but most of them were bussed in. It's a carefully orchestrated show, loaded with symbolism. And at a time when authoritarianism is on the rise, a visit like this suggests that Serbia is moving in a similar direction.
Where is authoritarianism on the rise? So let's ignore the fact that Serbia could be a backdoor for Russia into Europe if a military conflict ever arises. That is not the message of the New York Times. The NYT is disregarding all the pro-democracy changes that did happen in Europe and around the world, such as the Ukraine Revolution, the Arab Spring, and even Serbia hunting down, prosecuting, and at times extraditing what the European Union considered to be Serbian war criminals, as well as going through reforms the last 15 years and letting go of Kosovo, all to have a good trade relation with the EU. But just as with Ukraine's Western liberal perspective, same with Serbia, a nation wanting to have a free trade zone with the EU without joining the EU is thus authoritarian. And let's get Switzerland in on this in the next episode, eh guys?
Vučić was elected in 2017. Over the last 2 years, he's amassed more power, silenced the press, and undermined opposition.
Which is why we're about to do all the things allegedly not allowed to do in public with no given privacy of the interviewees to spread our message.
In November, Borko Stefanović, a prominent opposition leader, was assaulted on his way to meet some of his supporters.
Just describe the attack itself, what happened.
They knocked me unconscious from the back, so I was hit. They actually tried to murder me because when I was unconscious, they continued to hit me in the head. There was a lot of blood on my shirt, and at the press conference the day after, I showed the bloodied shirt to the public, and actually that image of that shirt was the spark for these protests.
And that's why the protesters carry signs saying no more bloody
Yes,
shirts.
exactly. That's the reason.
So, which opposition party are you from? When did your incident happen? Who are, quote, they? They the government, or a bunch of hot-headed nationalists? Did the president hire a bunch of thugs to assault you? We got absolutely zero information from that conversation. I checked the Serbian opposition parties and could not find Stefanović's name on it. And all other sources regarding to this movement are in Serbian. So not getting international press coverage despite how severe NYT makes this sound, yet not censored throughout Serbian news networks and websites that clearly aim to spread this movement, which even I, a non-Serbian reader, can tell. But beyond that, I am at a loss. Your boy Ukraine War Awareness cannot provide more information about this opposition, quote, group, or their demands, or anything else, because as the purpose of my video response to the New York Times, I got zero information out of this entire video. But let's continue, see what they have to say.
Why?
The attack sent thousands of protesters into the streets. And they've returned for 6 weeks straight, accusing the president of creating a climate of fear and paranoia.
Honestly, those voodoo dolls are making me more paranoid.
We sat down with President Vučić
Dobar dan.
and asked him to respond to his critics.
I guess there's some concern that in your relationship with Putin, that maybe that model is being adopted here as well.
Which model?
The model, the more authoritarian style of government.
If you think so, what can I say to you?
You can tell me if you think that's an incorrect analysis or if you think that's accurate.
I think it is an incorrect analysis. I think that we belong to a very democratic society and...
Alright, so let's picture ourselves as a corporate CEO, and you had a meeting and then some journalists asks if you're adopting their model. It's only natural to ask, what model? What exactly are you asking or referring to? Accusing someone at authoritarianism and then saying no to the allegations goes as quick as Trump saying he's not working for Putin.
I never worked for Russia, and you know that answer better than anybody. I never worked for Russia. Not only did I never work for Russia, I think it's a disgrace that you even asked that question, because it's a whole big fat hoax. It's just a hoax.
So they show 25 seconds of an interview with the president of a nation that they're throwing multiple accusations of horrible things. But as you can see, nothing in specific was shown. New York Times most probably did ask him regarding specific issues, but probably did not get the answers they were looking for. Bottom line is that any studio would not purposely set up an appointment with a full-time, one-on-one interview with a leader for a 25-second clip including handshakes and hellos. But even that, the NYT was able to salvage, and because the president was probably genuinely clueless in those clips about what they are trying to ask of him, is intended for the viewers to be a bad thing, because the president himself did not provide any, quote, analyses, even though NYT doesn't show us them asking for specific analyses. There are books with hundreds of pages written about authoritarianism, and they try to smush it up into 20 seconds.
We met Jelena Anasonović, one of the original organizers of the anti-government protests.
So wait, is this what we're getting on here?
Yeah.
Number 41?
Yeah, 41.
41.
Okay.
All right. Whoop.
Serbian public transportation.
Yes, how horrible our transportation is, even though the yellow bus stop lane is clearly continuing and they were most likely standing a little bit away from the bus stop. So is this what the college kids in Serbia have to complain about? The 41 bus?
So these protests, they started over the beating of one politician, but it's sort of taken on a lot more, so that it's kind of everyone who's upset about what exactly?
The main reason is the raising violence in our institutions. They're creating the atmosphere of fear.
I like it how rapidly NYT cut off her conversation right after she said the word fear. But listen, while we're on the topic of fear and public transportation, if this guy is really investigating Big Brother and tyranny, how is he not concerned about our own New York City buses that have about 8 live feed cameras in them with facial recognition watching our every move, whereas the Serbian public transportation just has an electronic sign that says which bus stop is the next stop? We don't even have that. We just have Big Brother cams.
She sat down with a group of friends in a downtown cafe to plan the next demonstration.
Šta je bilo za onog lika što dolazi iz Novog Sada svaki put na protest?
Pešaka? Da. On je meni pisao inbox, ali ja nisam imala vremena.
Imaš kontakt?
Imam.
Ajde da ga stavimo na šetalicu.
On je stalno na šetalici.
Protester talk, with a bunch of college kids not hiding their identities. Guy walks, he holds banner, write letters. Oh, the horror of our government, always allowed to walk and whatnot.
Have all of you thought about leaving at some point?
Yeah, definitely in some points of despair we thought about leaving the country, but it was like more that we want to have decent jobs, we want to have a decent society without lies, manipulation, discrimination.
I mean, to be, you guys are out here with your faces, your names. Are you not afraid? I mean, are you worried that there might be consequences for either you or your family?
Yes, we are.
You are. But you're still out here.
Huge consequences. Just chilling on a block, not having our group's voices heard. That was the crime. And with all sarcasm aside, guys, they all seem to speak or at least understand English, in which I asked the New York Times, find me an English-speaking European in any country that didn't think about leaving the country for a job. That's like asking a New Yorker, have you ever considered going to a different state?
Yes, because we need to be here, because I want to change something and I want to live in a decent, normal country.
We need to be here by the 41 bus stop and let them know we will not stand in decent transportation. Okay, I'll stop with the sarcasm now. They do not tell us anything that's not decent. Again, notice how the New York Times just likes to use scary words, but does not explain what the scary words are actually doing. Post-apocalyptic dread vibe music.
The students' frustrations have echoed throughout the city, and people have joined the movement from all walks of life. Like here, at one of the oldest theaters in Belgrade.
Ne možemo da se dogovorimo. Mrak je za vas jedina kazna za ovu zemlju. Jedini spas!
The night we attended, a dark comedy about the breakdown of society was showing. Bane Trifunović is a well-known actor here, and he is now a public face for the movement.
Stojim ovde sam!
Wow, bravo.
2 of Bane's shows have been banned. A reminder, he said, of the 1990s, when former President Slobodan Milosevic ruled through intimidation.
Okay, since we did not see the shows or are even given a plot point besides evil dictators, here in New York City, and this is true, wanted to ban a 1984 play based on George Orwell's novel because every time people went to see it, they'd come back out violent and assault other play viewers. Now that should make you think.
In 2000, a popular movement swept him out of power.
You know, this building has a lot of history because when you see all these photos here, it's all about history.
Yeah, they're amazing. One of the things that I'm so curious about, how heavily history hangs over everywhere here. I mean,
it's everywhere. It's in this whiskey, you know, it's everywhere.
So I don't want to date you, but so you would have been in your 20s in 2000, right? You know, now 18 years after that moment, here you are in, I don't know how you would describe it, but did you feel disappointed?
Yes.
Why?
Because actually nothing happens. Now we are living in worst play ever written, you know.
You're living in the worst play ever written.
Yeah.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. If I go to a Hard Rock Cafe or Planet Hollywood restaurant, I guess I can feel like I'm in the worst movie ever.
U tišini pale se sveće od Slavije.
Again, you see how rapidly NYT has cut that dialogue? The protesters aren't violent, they're not being silenced, I don't see any riot police presence, and nobody is hiding their identities. So what is the issue here? This march thing was most likely legally registered in advance, just as required in any European or Western country. I mean, here in downtown Brooklyn, I swear the amount of times I saw over 15 NYPD cruisers just to surround about 60 shouting anti-Trump college kids that got their protesting permissions, of course, most likely. My point is that I don't see any issues with this particular opposition movement or the government. There's many marches being held in many names demanding much broader changes around the world every single day.
I met up with Yelena again. She was one of the thousands attending a vigil for a politician who was murdered 1 year ago.
As I mentioned before, I tried searching up this movement. I even tried looking up that slogan. And my initial reaction to this video before the research was that if some Croatian minorities are just seeking more rights. And then I tried to translate this sign and it automatically detected Croatian instead of Serbian. And to be honest, I still don't know what this whole issue is about. The best translation I got out of that sign is, "We are still above," and below it, 1 out of 5 million. However, I don't know if it's 1 out of 5 million or 1 to 5 million. You see, New York Times, you don't tell me nothing. And there's a big difference, 1 out of 5 million and 1 to 5 million.
But even as more people have risen up week after week, few of them expect to take down the government. Vučić remains powerful, and many who oppose him don't see a real alternative in the opposition.
Try pitchforks instead of candles, maybe? I don't know what else to say, except that the New York Times is trying to create that threat to democracy vibe from democratic protests or Memorial March. I don't even know. I also should mention that over 1,000 people liked this video. Were they manipulated, or did they actually learn something? Because the video is pretty much over.
But they hope that their continuing resistance will at least break down the barrier of fear.
Did anybody else sense fear at all throughout this video? Except for the voodoo doll, maybe? Was it because of Putin? He can be scary at times. Anyways, I hope you all can see the points I stated in the beginning of the video, with the fact that we got no information out of this video, no background or anything about the movement except that somebody got beat up and somebody died 1 year ago. The so-called experts or resistance leaders that they met throughout their multiple headquarters, I guess, that's full of history and everything, and most importantly, the left is trying to make us take actions against the governments they deem evil and try to lay an entire foundation of democracy being in danger. And if you don't believe me that this is a leftist agenda, the video that New York Times put on their end screen of this video is called "How the Far Right is Shaking Germany's Political Order." Dispatch. I almost forgot that part. And in this specific case, such minor details that information can only be found through their domestic sources, that again, the New York Times themselves claim has been cracked down. Pretty ironic if you ask me. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We now have a Discord server, links in the description, as well as on Twitter, Patreon, Ko-fi. Support this channel, please. Please excuse my absence over the past months, and yes, I am still planning to work on new content. I have 3 videos almost ready to upload that I've had planned even before New Year's, but unfortunately I broke my hand and am monoplegic temporarily. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please like if you liked this video, and I'll be coming back very soon.